Knowing your role is even hard. Knowing your role is even hard as an NBA player. Just ask Aiden. Just ask Aiden. So imagine what happens if you put five random people to. So imagine. So imagine what happens if you put five random people. Imagine what happens when you put five people. So imagine what happens when you put five random. So imagine what happens if you put five random niggas on a 2K game. Most of the time, at least one person is gonna ruin the game. Let me explain the roles position by position. Let's start with the center. This this one should be simple. The main job of the center is to get the rebound, obviously. So you would think. But for some reason, it's not obvious to anybody. For some reason, it's not obvious to everybody. Some bigs don't even try to box out and run down the court, expecting other people. Some bigs don't even box out. They run. Some bigs don't even try to box out. Some bigs don't even try to box out, just running down the court, expecting. Some bigs don't even try to box out. Some bigs don't even try to box out, expecting the PG to get the board and pass it to him. And when you call it out and say, and when you call it out, look, I'm not telling, look, I'm not telling the center, look, I'm not telling the center that getting boards is the only role. Look, I'm not telling the center that getting boards is the only role you have. Look, I'm not telling the center that getting boards is the only thing to. Look, I'm not telling. Fuck! Look, I'm not telling. Look, I'm not telling the center that the only. Look, I'm not telling. Look, I'm not telling. Look, I'm not telling the center that your only role is to get boards. But it is your main. But it is your main role. You don't see guys like Victor or. You don't see. You don't see guys like Victor and Nikola Jokic complaining. You don't see guys like Victor and. You don't see guys like Victor and Nikola. You don't see. You don't see guys like Victor or Jokic complaining. That's just your job as a. You don't see people. You don't see. You don't see Victor or Jokic complaining about. You don't see Victor or Jokic complaining about getting boards. That's just your main job, bro. You can still score assists, but your main job is to get boards. Power forward. Honestly, this might be one of the most forgettable. Honestly, this might be one of the. This might be one of the most forgettable position. Also, the easiest one. As a power forward, you're probably gonna get the. You're as a power forward, you're probably gonna be the person with the. As a power forward, you're probably gonna be the. As a power forward, you're probably gonna be the player with the less touches. Your job is similar to a center. You need to help the center get boards. Play defense. No. Mais pas play defense. And there's a valid reason why I think that power forward and center should. There's a valid reason why power. There's a valid reason why power forwards and centers should get the ball. There's a valid reason why power forwards and centers get. There's a valid reason why centers and power forwards should get the ball first. So you can throw it out to the PG or the. So you can throw it out to the PG. So you can throw it out to the PG as fast as possible. As fast as possible. So you can throw it out to the PG. So you can give it to the PG So you can give it to the PG so you can start making plays. Next, small forward. This is probably the least blamed position. This is probably the least blamed position in the game. But it's actually one of the most interesting roles. As a small forward, you have to do a little bit of everything. You have to read the game and know what your team needs. Rebounds, playmaking, shooting, adjust your game to the team. If they need a shooter, you become the shooter. If they need a defender, you become the defender. If they need another rebounder, become the other rebounder. If you ask me, the small forward is the second easiest position. Shooting guard. Pretty obvious. You only need to score, get open, and sometimes be the other point guard. Now we get to the hardest position on the game, point guard. Finding a good point guard in 2K is damn near impossible. Finding a good point guard in 2K is almost impossible. Because the point guard basically decides if you win or lose. Your first main role is to pass it to the open teammate. But if you can't pass it to the open teammate, you gotta create something. You have to break down the defense, find the weakest defender, create plays. A lot of players no. A lot of people don't understand that. They become PGs because they want the ball. But it's deeper than that. The team is trusting you to make the good decision. That's why there's so much pressure on the PG. They expect the whole team is reality. The whole team is expecting you to be perfect. And to be honest, that's why it's the hard. And to be honest, that's why I'm not PG. I just know I'm not that guy. I just know it's not a role for me. You could be playing absolutely perfect, but just because you miss one shot, you're getting ghosted by the rest of the team. Anyways, I think that's enough about the community. What about the people on the top? The people who are What about the people on the top? What about the people on the top? The people who... What about the people on the top? The people that represent 2K itself, like 2K Ron, like Ronnie 2K.